biographies, doing the research about them. Many of you here probably know the story of David Kato. If you don't, you're about to hear about it. He's probably the most contemporary person we have on the walk. I guess he and Frank Kameny both passed in 2011, so that makes him the newest folks. He represents a message and a reality that I think we all need to bear in mind while we stand here in the middle of Homo Heights, USA, on Main Street, USA, in front of the new LGBT senior thing next to the $30 million center on Halsted. We've got it made here. It was not given to us, and there are many people here that are well aware of what kind of fight we had to engage to make this a reality. This was built by our community for our community, and I make no mistake about that. But before I get to my soapbox, I'm thrilled to have this particular plaque here in the story of David Kato. I'd like to introduce Daniel, is it Weyl? From the Heartland Alliance, which built this magnificent building behind you here, as well as the one that the Center on Halsted is in. And I should point out that we are next to the Jane Addams plaque. Jane Addams is considered the founder of what became the Heartland Alliance. And it is very fitting for these two plaques to be side by side. So Daniel, take it away.
Thank you, Victor, and thank you to all those at the Legacy Project and those of you gathered here today to recognize and pay homage to David Kato, a trailblazing figure in the global fight for equality. David was a leading activist and human rights defender for LGBT communities in Uganda. He was a founding member of Integrity Uganda, an LGBT faith-based organization, and later joined SMUG, Sexual Minorities Uganda, which was the nation's first and only umbrella organization for LGBT community members. In 2011, David was brutally murdered because of his sexual orientation and because of the work he had done to advance the rights of LGBT citizens. In the years leading up to David's death, there had been an alarming spike of homophobia and transphobia in Uganda, fueled in part by the presence and resources of American fundamentalist evangelicals who incited violence against the LGBT community. David was arguably the most outspoken and visible activist in Uganda and was a prominent leader known globally for his efforts. At the time, Uganda's parliament was drafting legislation that would sentence those convicted of being gay to death. David knew very well the risks associated with his activism, but never allowed the threats he faced interfere in his fight for equality and progress. He was a courageous man who amplified the voices of LGBT Ugandans in a way no one else had before. Throughout the country, he documented cases of discrimination and torture against LGBT persons and had a profound impact on the lives of those who were systematically marginalized and abused because of who they were and who they loved. For many years, Heartland Alliance worked closely with David, supporting his and other activists' advocacy efforts at the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. The tireless efforts undertaken by David and a diverse coalition of local and international NGOs, of which Heartland Alliance was a proud member, culminated in this past April's passing at the African Commission of a landmark resolution to end violence and other human rights violations against persons on the basis of their real or imputed sexual orientation or gender identity. Heartland Alliance continues to support LGBT activists around the world who secure the safety and well-being of LGBT individuals at risk, and have trained organizations in the United States and overseas to work with LGBT refugees who are unable to remain in their countries of origin because of persecution based on their sexual orientation or gender identity. Even here at home, we see how much work is still needed to be done. Queer youth, and particularly queer youth of color, are homeless on our streets. Meanwhile, LGBT seniors are often marginalized and neglected. And it was in response to this that Heartland Alliance built one of the first LGBT-friendly senior housing units that you see before us today. And so there's still more to be done. And while we continue to mourn the loss of David, we celebrate the tremendous legacy of his and the lives he touched through his words and actions by caring for those around us and continuing the struggle for equality and justice, both overseas and here at home.
Let's go. The David Kato plaque has been sponsored by Stoli Group USA. Excuse me. Stoli has been in the news a lot over the last year and a half in the LGBT community, and regardless of what your opinion is on that particular controversy involving Russia, I have to tell you that I've never dealt with people who were so gracious and accommodating because they really wanted to get behind this plaque, and they actually have made a 3-year commitment to a plaque every year for the Legacy Walk that will be featuring human rights activists. And that means a lot to me personally. The rep from Stoli cannot be here today. They will be here next week. But they did send a statement, and that is, David Kato was a person of extraordinary courage who fought for the human rights of all people. We at Stoli Group USA are proud to honor his legacy as we believe in equal rights for all people and hope this tribute will continue to drive the drive for change, which we all hope for in this world. Thank you to Stoli. Who is going to do the honors? Who's going to read? Stella Barrett. Boy, I like that name. I want to be your agent.
Okay. Hello. David Kato was born to the Kasul clan in his ancestral village of Nakawala. He first acknowledged his sexual orientation while teaching in Johannesburg. In 2005, he became a founding member of Integrity Uganda, a faith-based LGBT organization led by Bishop Christopher Sinyonjo to provide support and counseling for LGBT persons who are increasingly falling victim to anti-gay hatred. In 2007, Kato joined Sexual Minorities Uganda, SMUG, the nation's first and only umbrella group by and for LGBT people. In 2009, several well-funded evangelical Christians from the United States traveled to Uganda. The rallies and workshops they staged exacerbated existing anti-gay hysteria. In response, Ugandan MP David Bahati introduced the Anti-Homosexuality Bill, which came to be known as the Kill the Gays Bill because of its call for the execution of homosexuals. To put a human face on the impending genocide, Kato became the first person to speak openly with the Ugandan media about being a gay man, an act of unprecedented courage for which he was beaten and jailed. He addressed the hostile anti-LGBT climate in his country at the 2010 United Nations Conference on Human Rights, while Uganda's Human Rights Commission openly joked and snickered. Later that year, he was among those whose names, addresses, and photos were published on the front page of the Ugandan tabloid Rolling Stone under the banner Hang Them. Kato and 2 others listed in the article sued the newspaper. In January 2011, the Ugandan High Court Justice ruled against the Rolling Stone's incitement to violence, but it was too late to save him. Days later, he was found bludgeoned to death in his home. At Kato's funeral, family, friends, and fellow activists wore t-shirts with his photos on the front and the phrase, "Ludo continua, the struggle continues," on the back. In spite of worldwide condemnation, a slightly modified version of the anti-homosexuality bill became law in 2014, plunging LGBT people in Uganda into a living hell, only to be nullified 5 months later in a technicality which triggered renewed vigilant violence. While politicians continue to wrangle with the consequences of the humanitarian crisis they have created, the martyrdom of David Kato remains an inspiration for the LGBT activists everywhere.
Thank you. Please do the honor. And welcome David Kato to the Legacy Walk. Now, some of you who are more observant may have noticed that this plaque looks a little bit different. And I'll explain that. It's actually very, very germane to this story. Our contacts in Uganda, it's very, very hard to communicate there if you're not directly tied, perhaps institutionally or systemically. If you're an outside person, it's very difficult to talk to anyone there. The city of Chicago requires us, and as they should, to engage independent experts on everybody that we honor on the Legacy Walk. And the only people who are actually experts on David Kato are people who live in Uganda. We worked for months trying to establish a contact there, and I finally was able to engage with someone here when there was a conference in June about the situation in the African continent. And that individual vowed to assist us with getting the plaque vetted, and he returned to Uganda at the end of July, and all contact with him was lost. We tried unsuccessfully for weeks to get that information. It was never responded to, and I finally reached out to my friend Aaron Jackson of Equality House, the Rainbow House in Topeka, Kansas, which operates several safe houses on the ground. And they connected me with Pepe Anziemo, who was David Kato's friend, best friend in life, and is currently the president of SMUG. And we were able to get through to him while he was in California, and he vetted the text of the plaque on his cell phone while camping because he didn't have a computer with him. Then there was a struggle to get the image for him. These things compounded, and what ended up happening was the plaque could not actually be ordered until almost 3 weeks after the other plaques. The plaque manufacturer did everything they possibly could to get it done, but it just was not meant to be, I guess. So we put the facsimile up. It's a copy of the proof. The plaque is going to be installed next Friday, and we've been working with Heartland to planning a separate ceremony in memory of David Kato that will actually be the centerpiece of the evening, where we're going to talk about what's actually happening in Africa. That will be co-facilitated by the Legacy Project and Heartland, and hopefully that'll take place in November, and we'll do it up again for him right when the real plaque is here. But I just wanted you guys to understand, I feel awful that the actual plaque isn't here, but it's instructive about how something happening that far away in the world can actually impact us right here. So at least have this.